The Jack Miller Center for Teaching America's Founding Principles and History presents Dr. Alan Guelzo, one of the nation's leading scholars on Abraham Lincoln. Dr. Guelzo discusses the legacy of Lincoln with Dr. Michael Andrews.
I have a what-if question for you, and I know that some historians don't like what-if questions, but I hope that you indulge me. Had Abraham Lincoln not been elected in 1860, how do you think events would have played out?
Well, you're right about not liking what-if questions. I'm very, very chary about dealing with what-if questions because sometimes they invite historians to write fiction, and if you want to read bad fiction, just read the fiction historians write. On the other hand, there is this one virtue, maybe not in asking the question what if, but in asking the question what were the alternatives. That helps to clarify not so much the alternatives, it helps to clarify the importance of what actually did happen. And what I'd have to say in this respect is, what if Lincoln had not been elected? Well, for one thing, it's difficult for me to imagine any other important American political figure in 1860 being able to pull off what Lincoln did. I go down the list of those who were rivals and challengers and of equal stature and maybe more stature to Lincoln in 1860. William Henry Seward from New York, Salmon Chase from Ohio. You go down the list, Mike, and the blood runs cold because you realize that none of these people could have done this. They did good jobs in the thing they were doing, but they could not have done this. You look at the generals, they could not have done this. That then really gives you the creeps. Because absent Abraham Lincoln, what conceivably could have happened? Conceivably, the United States could have gone in some kind of negotiated settlement. Let's say that after a year of war, George McClellan gets to do what he really believed ought to have been done, and that was sit down at the negotiating table and work things out. Well, what would a negotiated settlement have produced? It would have produced, at the minimum, two independent republics in North America. Jefferson Davis and the Confederates always made that clear. They were not negotiating reunion. They were negotiating separation. No ifs, ands, or buts. If at any point in the war someone had declared a truce in order to have negotiations, you would not have gotten that truce revoked. The negotiations would have gone forward and the impetus would have been on the Confederate side. In that case, would the fissure of the American Republic have stopped at just two? Do you suppose the West Coast would have sat by idly? What about the upper Midwest? Jefferson Davis actually believed there was a strong chance that the upper Midwest, because it was so dependent on the Mississippi River line for commerce, would detach itself from the North and join the Confederacy. Would it have stopped there? Would we not have become like the Bolivarian republics in South America, dividing and subdividing like so many political amoeba, and then making war on each other, either economic war through tariffs and taxation, or more literally and more bloodily through physical, literal war with each other, seeking all kinds of dominance over the others, as in fact the Bolivarian republics did in the 19th century. At that point, Mike, what would have happened in the 20th century? What would have happened in World War I? Who would have stood behind the Allied cause? Who would have rallied to Churchill? Who would have supplied the great arsenal of democracy that prevented the universal midnight of Nazism and fascism from descending over the entire civilization? Who would have kept that from happening if, in fact, we had not had Lincoln? I don't know what it was, Mike, that we did. It must have been some good deed, some extraordinarily good deed, that we deserved to have him. But he was the man standing in the breach, the right man at the right place. He redeemed the idea of democracy. He cleansed the soiled robe of the soil of slavery. He kept us together as a single nation so that we were ready at that time, which was yet to come, the time of greatest universal testing, to step forward and stop those forces which could have, as Churchill said, plunged us into a dark ages, made more sinister and more protracted than the original model. Yes, I think in that respect, we owe Abraham Lincoln sometimes so much more as a people than we even suspect.
Hear, hear. Thank you so much, Alan.
You bet.
This has been a Jack Miller Center digital media presentation. For more information, visit thejackmillercenter.org.